Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. I, 17 female, am dealing with a situation that has left me feeling completely heartbroken and alienated. My father is getting married to his fiance, Claire, 39 female, in a few weeks, and instead of being part of the celebration, I've been disinvited. According to my father, it's a child-free wedding, but the truth is much more painful. For context, my mother passed away when I was 10. She was the most kind, warm, and fiercely loving woman on earth. She made our house feel like a home, and even though she's been gone for 7 years, her presence is still deeply missed by those who loved her. Losing her was devastating, and it forever changed my relationship with my dad. He wasn't the same after she died. He withdrew, became distant, and for a long time, it felt like I had lost both of my parents. When my dad met Claire 2 years ago, I was cautiously optimistic. He seemed to light up around her in a way I hadn't seen in years. He smiled more, laughed more, and talked about the future again. I wanted to be happy for him because I knew he deserved to move forward and find joy again. At first, Claire seemed friendly and eager to bond with me. She would ask me polite questions about school or my interests, but I quickly realized that her kindness was surface level. There were subtle digs, like when she commented about how spoiled I was by my dad, or how I must be used to getting my way because I was an only child. Claire also had a knack for making me feel excluded. She and my dad would go on weekend trips, have fancy dinners, and make plans for holidays, none of which I was invited to. When I asked my dad about it, he'd brush it off and say, "Claire and I need time to build our relationship. You'll understand when you're older." It hurt, but I kept quiet. I didn't want to seem like the jealous daughter who couldn't accept her dad moving on. When my dad and Claire announced their engagement last year, I tried to be supportive. I even helped my dad pick out the engagement ring. I was nervous about the changes this marriage would bring, but I wanted to believe that we could all find a way to coexist as a family. Then, a few weeks ago, my dad sat me down and told me their wedding would be child-free. I was confused and asked if that meant I wasn't invited. He looked uncomfortable and said, "Unfortunately, yes. Claire and I agreed it's best to stick to the child-free rule. We don't want to make exceptions." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm turning 18 in 6 months. Am I really being lumped into the same category as toddlers and young children? I asked him if he truly wanted me at this wedding, and he said, "Of course I do, but this is the decision we made together." I went to my room and cried. It wasn't just about missing the wedding. It was about feeling unwanted. How could my own father not fight for me to be there? A few days later, everything came to a head. I was walking past Claire's home office when I overheard her talking on the phone. She was laughing and said, "There's no way I'm letting her come. She looks exactly like my mom's name." Can you imagine standing at the altar and seeing her there? It would ruin everything. I don't need a reminder of my husband's ex-wife at my wedding. I froze. I felt tears streaming down my face. This wasn't about a child-free wedding at all. Claire didn't want me there because I reminded her of my mom. She was jealous of the fact that I looked like her and didn't want a ghost of the past haunting her big day. I couldn't keep this to myself. I went to my grandparents, my dad's parents, and told them everything. I explained how I'd been disinvited under the guise of the child-free rule and shared exactly what I overheard Claire say on the phone. My grandparents were livid. They've always adored me and were incredibly close to my mom before she passed. My grandfather called my dad immediately and told him, if my name isn't invited to the wedding, we won't be attending either. My grandmother backed him up, saying, "This is your daughter. How can you let someone treat her this way? If you go through with this, we can't support it." When my dad came home that evening, he was furious. He accused me of trying to sabotage his relationship and said, "Why can't you just support me for once? Why do you always have to make things about you?" I told him, "This isn't about me. This is about Claire not wanting me there because I remind her of Mom. How can you be okay with that?" He looked stunned for a moment, but then he said, "You're making things up. Don't you dare blame Claire for things like that and then badmouth her to your grandparents." I stood my ground and repeated exactly what I heard Claire say. Instead of addressing the issue, he doubled down, accusing me of being manipulative and immature. "You're turning my parents against me," he said. "You're trying to ruin my wedding because you don't like Claire." I told him, "I've tried to like Claire. I've tried to make this work. But how can I when she made it clear she doesn't want me in your life?" The argument ended with my dad storming out of the room. And since then, things have been tense and unbearable. I've been staying at my grandparents' house as much as possible because I can't stand being in the same house as Claire right now. My grandparents are standing firm in their decision not to attend the wedding if I'm excluded. But my dad keeps blaming me for the fallout. He won't admit that Claire's behavior is the real issue, and I'm starting to wonder if our relationship will ever recover. I feel torn. On one hand, I don't want to ruin my dad's wedding or his chance at happiness. On the other hand, I can't ignore how Claire has treated me and how my dad has let it happen. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for telling my grandparents what Claire said and for not keeping quiet about being disinvited from the wedding? OP's dad is so blinded by Claire that he's willing to let her treat OP horribly. The fact that he's prioritizing her insecurities over his own daughter is heartbreaking. OP has done nothing wrong by telling her grandparents the truth. If Claire can't handle being reminded of OP's mom, she shouldn't be marrying someone who already has a child. And OP's dad needs to wake up and realize he's alienating his daughter for someone who clearly doesn't care about her. At least OP has her grandparents to lean on for support. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Wow, just wow. Not the a-hole at all. Claire sounds incredibly insecure and manipulative, and your dad is enabling her behavior because he's afraid of rocking the boat. I can't believe he's okay with you being excluded from his wedding, especially over something as ridiculous as you reminding Claire of your mom. You've done more than enough to support his relationship, and he's taking you for granted. Your grandparents are legends for standing up for you. Hold your ground. You deserve so much better than this. I feel so bad for you, OP. You're 17, on the cusp of adulthood, and your dad is already treating you like an afterthought. Not the a-hole. You had every right to tell your grandparents what was going on. They deserve to know how Claire's treating their granddaughter. It's not your fault that they chose to stand up for you, and your dad needs to stop blaming you for his fiance's actions. Honestly, this doesn't bode well for their marriage. If Claire's this insecure now, imagine how things will be after they're married. Not the a-hole. Claire is acting like a jealous teenager, and your dad is being completely spineless by letting her call the shots. This isn't about you ruining his relationship. It's about Claire manipulating him into alienating you. The fact that she's intimidated by your resemblance to your mom says more about her insecurities than anything else. You've done nothing wrong, and your grandparents are amazing for standing by you. I hope your dad wakes up before it's too late, but even if he doesn't, know that you're not the problem here. Update. Things have escalated since my original post, and I wanted to share what's happened. After my grandparents found out about everything, they gave my dad an ultimatum. He and Claire needed to apologize to me and re-invite me to the wedding if he wanted to make things right. My grandparents told him that excluding his daughter for such a petty and cruel reason was unacceptable, and they won't stand for it. Unfortunately, my dad refused. He doubled down, insisting that Claire had done nothing wrong and that I was the one making things worse. Claire, however, took things even further. She called me directly, and what she said was horrifying. She accused me of ruining her relationship with my dad, saying that I was selfish and only thinking about myself. She called me a snitch for telling my grandparents what I'd overheard and said I'd caused unnecessary drama. Then she said, "I don't want to see you ever again. You've been nothing but a problem since the start." What Claire didn't know was that I had her on speaker, and my grandparents heard every word. The moment she finished her tirade, my grandmother snatched the phone out of my hand and said, "You're a disgusting human being. How dare you speak to her like that? Shame on you for being jealous of a dead woman and an innocent child." Then she hung up the phone. At that point, there was no going back. My dad and Claire went through with their wedding last weekend, but my grandparents and I didn't attend. Instead, while they were busy celebrating their big day, we packed up all my belongings from the house. My grandparents told me that I'd always have a home with them, and I'm staying with them now. My dad hasn't reached out since the wedding, and as far as I know, he's on his honeymoon with Claire. I feel heartbroken and betrayed, but I'm also relieved to be away from that toxic environment. My grandparents have been my rock through all of this, and I don't know what I'd do without them. I have 3 children, James, Anna, and Charles. James is technically not my son, but I was his nanny before I began dating my husband, and the mother abandoned him at birth, so I've been in his life since the very beginning. My husband and I married when James was 2, and I adopted him when he was 3. He does know that he is adopted, but he was never one of those kids who wondered about the bio parent, and he fully considers me his mother. Charles is married to Maggie, who I have always had issues with. She is rude and overbearing, and since she had her first child a year ago, she thinks she has some tool to manipulate me. About 6 months ago, we had a family dinner, and Maggie was angry. I don't even remember how this started, but she said that I am much more welcoming towards James's girlfriend than I've ever been to her. I told her my relationship with James's girlfriend is none of her business. She then said that it's messed up that I treat her more like a daughter-in-law when James isn't even my son. I threw her out of the house for that. Charles tried to apologize over the phone, but I said I wasn't interested. She needs to apologize, and to James, not me. Maggie kind of apologized to James. She said she shouldn't have said it, but I'm a horrible person. I told her that was a pretty weak apology, and she never acknowledged how hurtful what she said was. James never liked her, but he currently hates her. She literally said after the fact, "I'm sorry that it hurt you, but it is the truth." Charles is her bio son. Maggie called me the other day all upset about a social media picture off Anna's daughter and me, and whining about how it isn't fair to her son that I have more of a relationship with Anna's child. She said she wants to sit down and compromise so her son can get what Anna's daughter gets. I asked if she was truly sorry for belittling James's adoption, and she said, "All I said is you were James's nanny and Charles's mom." I hung up on her, and now Charles is angry, and I said I won't even give it a chance. Not the a-hole. You gave her multiple chances. She kept going off on how your adopted son is not your son. You're his mom. You may not share the same DNA, but you raised him and loved him. Maggie went completely out of line. Don't let anyone tell you he is not your son. You're not his nanny. You're his mother. Not the a-hole. It's bad news when a spouse of one of your children is only interested in attaining some kind of number 1 position in the hierarchy of the family. As if that is a real thing. I can't imagine this relationship between you and your other family members and Maggie is going to get much better. She's clearly not going to change her mind and realize that she's being incredibly disrespectful and mean. I'd just watch out to make sure your relationship with Charles isn't irreparably damaged by this. Not the a-hole. Tell Charles his wife is not welcome because she is not your bio daughter, and as that is the only way she considers people family, she can't really think of any of you as family. Until the day she understands that family is who you decide is family, bio or not, she is better off not having to see those who are not her family. My son got married a couple months ago. We'll call her Sarah. I've never been a big fan of Sarah, but I believe in keeping my mouth shut about such things. My wife and Sarah don't get along at all. My wife hates chocolate cake. I mean, she can hardly look at it, which is kind of weird because she likes chocolate, but not a big deal. If I wanted a chocolate birthday cake, I would buy my wife a cupcake or something, because it is very easy not to be an a-hole. Sarah and my son wanted an all-chocolate wedding cake. I feel like Sarah did this on purpose, because almost every wedding I've been to has multiple flavors, and the cake was 3 tiers. Still, it wasn't a big deal. My wife doesn't need cake. Well, Sarah made a comment about my wife must hate not having cake because she is used to everyone accommodating her. My wife said no, but it was a-hole behavior not to have any other dessert, and she would never treat her own mother-in-law that way. My wife said she doesn't really care, but family members have been commenting on how rude it is. Sarah got mad, and my son, jokingly, put a large piece of cake in my wife's mouth to shut her up. Well, like I said, she hates chocolate cake. She was sick all over the bottom of the dress. Sarah started screaming and crying about how we ruined everything. I calmly told her that her new husband ruined everything, and you don't force food into people's mouths. We left to get ice cream because apparently that is the only thing that can cleanse the taste of the chocolate cake. I don't know what Sarah did the rest of the night, because who would want to wear that dress? Now they are planning a vow renewal because the wedding was ruined, mostly by drama that Sarah's mother caused. I think a big vow renewal a year after the wedding is tacky, but whatever, I'm not the one paying. Sarah is demanding that we buy her a new gown since my wife ruined the first one. I told her absolutely not, and it is my son's fault, and a little hers for being tacky and rude. I mean, my wife doesn't love my mom either, but she at least knows how to be a gracious hostess and would have made sure there was something she would eat. Sarah ended up in tears over my refusal, and my son says I'm being an a-hole. Wow. So train wreck weddings with horrible drama hurricanes really do exist. You guys sound like you're terrible at de-escalation. Everyone sucks here. Everyone sucks here. Wow. Your son, because he shoved a cake in someone's mouth after knowing it would make her sick. And Sarah for her comments. You, because you say, I feel like Sarah did this on purpose, even though your son and Sarah both wanted it. And do you think she should have offered more flavors of cake? It's their wedding. Nobody is entitled to a flavor of cake. Almost every wedding I've been to has multiple flavors. That's some lucky stuff, my guy. Rich folks, I swear. I digress. You're a grown adult, and you sound like a child. Your wife for saying it was a-hole behavior not to have other dessert. Because again, Jesus, the entitlement. It's not your wedding. You and your wife clearly have a deeply ingrained issue with Sarah, and it's spilling over into your words and her behaviors. I don't think you need to pay for the dress, but y'all need to have some serious adult discussions and work out some stuff. This woman is part of your family now, and unless you want your son to stop talking to you, whether or not that is justified, you all need to mature very quickly. Yes, your son is the bigger a-hole here for his actions, but man, everyone in this story is petty and childish. Not the a-hole for not wanting to replace the dress. Your son effed up by shoving chocolate cake into his mom's face. It's not like she made herself sick all over the dress. So no, you are not in any way responsible for buying a new wedding dress. Plus, why can't she go buy a nice simple white dress for a renewal? But I do have to say, there do seem to be a whole lot of other issues in this relationship between everyone else. There has to be more to everything, and why everyone doesn't seem to get along. My husband and I have 3 daughters, 7 female, 5 female, and 3 female, and another girl on the way. We're not trying to have kids until we have a boy, by the way. We just always wanted to have a big family, so we plan on having 4 babies and stop. I'll call my mother-in-law Janet to make it easier. My husband is Janet's only child, and she is proud of the fact that her family has raised great men. Grandparents, great-grandparents were influential people in my city or even country. And because of that, BS to be honest, they have a tradition to have at least one man carry on the legacy. My husband totally disagrees with this tradition, and we made the decision together that he would have a vasectomy because we are satisfied with 4 girls. Unsurprisingly, his mother freaked out when she learned he had a vasectomy and has been pushing him to get it reversed. When she saw that her son wouldn't do it, she began to say that I had made his mind up and that I was the reason he didn't have a son. We don't cut contact because she helps us a lot with our daughters. She wants, and she never mistreats them. Besides, they are always excited to go to Grandma's house again. Sunday was the baby shower, and it was an event at my house. I had my family, friends, and my husband's family, mother-in-law, his aunts, and some cousins. There were tables scattered around, and my husband's family were at the same table. I went to say hello, talk to them to try to be present with all the tables, and here begins the part about me being an a-hole. The aunts and cousins started to congratulate me for another girl, and I think an aunt said something like, "It's too bad a boy didn't come. It would be perfect for the last child." Janet didn't even let me reply, and said with a, "Not all daughter-in-laws are capable of carrying out the family legacy. That's sad." I was shocked, and I admit, a little angry. Can I blame the hormones? I replied, "Look, Janet, in case you didn't know, to come a boy depends exclusively on your son's sperm, so stop talking nonsense." She was very embarrassed, so she became quiet and excused herself, left the house without saying anything. My husband thought it was funny, didn't get mad, and agreed that Janet needed it. But I suffered hate from his family, who knew about what I did, and said I humiliated her unnecessarily to the point where she walked away from the party and didn't leave her bedroom for a whole day. I don't think I did anything wrong. Maybe I could have spoken less harshly, but I was tired of hearing her nonsense, and my limit was the baby shower. And yes, my husband warned her to not talk about this. For fear of different treatment with our youngest, we decided to enter low contact, no contact with her. Am I the a-hole? Oh, so it was fine when she was trying to humiliate you by stating you were inadequate for not having male children. But you responding with the truth was beyond the pale? Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. She tried to publicly humiliate you. Somehow not giving birth to boys and breaking the family legacy is your fault. And all you did was correct her. Ask those family members why they prefer to blame you, instead of telling your mother-in-law off for trying to insult you and your baby. No one should get away with telling a pregnant mom that the child within her is the wrong one. Your mother-in-law and everyone who defended her is in the wrong here. Also, it seems like your mother-in-law knows if she acted hurt, her family members will forget that she started this whole thing. Pretty manipulative, I must say. Low contact, no contact is the way to go. Not the a-hole. She had it coming. Grandma needs to realize this is real life, not a period drama. It's her daughter-in-law, born and unborn granddaughter she is talking about. I am a 34 female, and I've been with my husband for 14 years. Since we were about 24, I've been hosting all family dinners for holidays and special occasions because I love cooking, and my father-in-law was tired of doing all the work on his own, and I enjoy it. My husband's little brother recently married to a woman he had been dating for 3 years. She is always invited, and her kids always come as well. This year, she started talking about how now that she is married, she will be allowed to host. The thing is, she's never asked anyone to host. She's never tried to even do a barbecue at their place. Then last week, she came over with my brother-in-law, and while him and my husband were outside in the backyard, she asked me if I could do her a huge favor to make her feel welcome, and as her older sister-in-law. She wants me to tell my husband's family that I'm tired of hosting and don't want to anymore, so they will in turn look for a solution, to which she will offer to cook and host. This struck me as strange for 3 reasons. 1, she can't cook, like at all. My brother-in-law cooks for their family. 2, she usually doesn't like being around everyone for long. She always goes and sits in her car or asks my brother-in-law to leave early, every single time. 3, my brother-in-law and her have a very small yard and dining room, which would be hard to fit that many people. Even with all those reasons, the most basic one is that I just don't want to. I love cooking for people and have always enjoyed putting everything together. I have asked her to chip in several times and try to include her, and she will agree and then beg off right before. I told her I don't feel comfortable lying, and that even if I did, my father-in-law and mother-in-law would automatically call BS anyways because they know me. She got pissed and said I'm trying to alienate her with my in-laws and that I'm just jealous I'm not the only daughter-in-law anymore. Her whole family is brigading on Facebook with vague posts about loyalty amongst women and being the bigger person. The older should always concede to the younger nonsense. My husband gives 0 ducks about it. He just said she's being a drama queen again and told his brother to get his wife to leave me alone. My brother-in-law was confused and his first words were, "Why? She can't cook," when I told him. The whole thing just seems too small and juvenile for me, but here I am, looking for an outside opinion. Edited to add, both myself and my father-in-law have asked her and brother-in-law if they wanted to do Easter this year, and again at 4th of July. They said no both times. I've also tried including her by asking her if she wanted to bring entrees, appetizers, etc., or responding when she asks if I want help. But she always accepts and then begs off at last minute, so we stopped asking. I am okay with letting her host, just without the lying, which she said no to. She wants to be asked. Not the a-hole, but buckle up, because your new sister-in-law is about to make every family holiday get-together a drama fest with her BS. Don't ever lie for someone who can't speak up for themselves and just say, "Hey, this year I'd like to host Thanksgiving." Not the a-hole. You're correct. She is being small and juvenile. But, as her older sister-in-law, you do have an opportunity to do her a favor. Sit her down and explain to her that if she wants to start hosting the family for events, she should just start. She doesn't need to jump right into Thanksgiving, which is a huge responsibility. She can and should start with smaller events. It isn't a competition, it's a family. The fact that you tend to host events doesn't make you a more important member of the family, and she doesn't need you to step down from anything in order to make a place for herself. She has a place whether she hosts events or not. I'm going to have to say not the a-hole here. If this were a normal situation, I might encourage you to let her host and figure it out. But her approach is completely bizarre. Why does she want to orchestrate a crisis that would tarnish your image and that she can swoop in and salvage? That's highly suspect. Final update. So, little brother-in-law resolved the issue, while pissing her off more, but still it's resolved. He started a group chat and asked if everyone would be willing to have Thanksgiving at their house this year. My in-law said sure. Then we got a call from brother-in-law. Apparently, he told sister-in-law that while he set up everything, he isn't going to be the one cooking since she wanted to host. Long story short, she changed her mind and it's back at our house now, but she is mad at brother-in-law. Still think this whole thing is dumb, but at least the Facebook monkeys are quiet now. My 25-year-old son has been married for about 2 years. I thought he was making a mistake, but we don't have the type of relationship where I can say that to him. My ex-wife did tell him that she thought he was going to regret it, but he brushed her off. They have a lot of marital issues, and now they have financial issues because of her career. My daughter-in-law considers herself a fashion designer. She doesn't have any investors, money, business knowledge, etc. All she has is designs she posts on social media, and nothing comes of it. She works at a call center while doing this as a hobby. My wife is 29, so not that much older than my son, and they do not get along. He stopped coming home from college breaks when I started dating her, and things have not improved much. My wife doesn't work, we don't have children, and I pay for a cleaning lady. My daughter-in-law makes a lot of comments about how it must be nice and asks what she does all day. My wife is a very traditional housewife, brings me a beer when I get home from work, always has dinner on the table at 6, and still dresses nice for me. My daughter-in-law has made demeaning comments about how she would be embarrassed to be my wife. My wife would be embarrassed to tell people she was a designer and not be able to back it up, but to each their own. My son and daughter-in-law were over the other day and I asked my wife to make me coffee. She got up to do it, and my daughter-in-law said something about, "Does it bother you that he treats you like the maid?" I replied that at least my wife doesn't have to wear fake jewelry to go with her fake career. My daughter-in-law got upset and left, and my son is pissed. Everyone sucks here, except your wife. If she's happy with her life, then no one had anything to say about it. The rest of you sound petty and awful. Everyone sucks here. Your daughter-in-law is right that you treat your wife like a maid. You're right that your daughter-in-law doesn't have her crap together and isn't in a place to judge. You all talk to each other with incredible immaturity. I'm guessing your wife is significantly younger than you. All of the dynamics here are really ducking weird. You're the a-hole. You married a woman barely older than your son while he was in college, so in her early 20s, and you're most likely in your 40s? That's kind of weird, but okay. Your wife doesn't have to work, chooses not to, doesn't have a work visa. She cheerfully brings you a beer. Cool. Sounds like you ordered her from the Perfect Wife catalog. You have this fairy tale life, yet you have the time to dissect her, daughter-in-law's social life, hobby, and career choice. Fashion is a fine hobby and creative outlet. If she fancies herself a designer, that's perfectly acceptable. She's not hurting anyone, stealing money, being a social pariah. She's earning a living at the call center. Who cares what she does in her downtime? This has literally nothing to do with you. Why do you need to take a dump on her life?